What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down the 5 best quarterback tips that every single quarterback needs to know. Let's get started with this video. But also, fellas, if you're a quarterback or a wide receiver and you would like to train with us this offseason, we are going to be coming out to 11 different states across the country for 2-day-long QB and wide receiver training camps. Next up on our camp tour, we'll be coming out to Dallas, Texas. Then we'll be heading out to the DMV area, St. Louis, Missouri, Honolulu, Hawaii, Boston, Massachusetts, Cleveland, Ohio, Austin, Texas, Newark, New Jersey, Seattle, Washington, Denver, Colorado, and Los Angeles, California. So if you guys are local to one of those 11 different cities that we are traveling to and would like to train with myself and my staff of coaches this offseason, check out that very first link in the description below. Again, first link in that description to sign up and how you guys can get more info on where we are traveling. Let's get back to this video. All right, guys, so the first thing that I want to talk about in terms of quarterbacks is where you are holding the football. So this is something that is so overly coached and so incorrectly coached, I feel, by a lot of quarterback coaches all across the country, and that's the ball carriage. So a lot of people who used to teach the old school method is hold the ball up on the ear or by the shelf. Now, the reason why I don't like that is, one, it's going to throw off your throwing sequence, and we're going to talk about that in a second, but two, that creates a lot of tension with your upper half at your shoulders and your traps. And as a quarterback, we want as much range of motion as possible with my upper body. So when you're holding the ball up by your ear, this is the throwing sequence part. So throwing a football, being able to throw the ball efficiently and being able to throw the ball at max velocity and power, it all comes from what? It all is going to come from your hips and your legs. Your ability to take that weight that's loaded onto your back leg, transfer it through, and get your hips to rotate through. Now, when it comes down to rotating at your hips, driving with your lower body, you have to make sure that your throwing motion is on time. Now, what do I mean by that? So throwing a football is very similar to hitting a baseball, because baseball hitters and quarterbacks are both rotational athletes. So as a baseball player, because everybody gets the baseball swing, you're holding the bat, you're loaded right here, you take a step with your front foot, but does the bat come open? No, you keep the bat closed and your hips bring the bat through, right? So that's how you create something called torque. Same thing when throwing a football, and you watch any NFL quarterback, they all do this. When they get back into their motion and they throw, their front foot gets down, but their front shoulder is closed. So now when that front foot gets down, and they obviously got to have a good base, and we're going to talk about the lower body as this video progresses, but front foot gets down, hips go through, then the ball comes through. Now, the reason why I don't like holding the ball up high is because that can throw off that throwing sequence. That's going to limit my power, and it's going to put more pressure on my shoulder and elbow. We want to be efficient quarterbacks, but we want to have efficiency that's sustainable. I want to have long-lasting efficiency. So when we go to throw, we don't want to hold the ball up here, because what's going to happen? You're probably going to lift directly to 90. Now, again, I'm not real picky in terms of the throwing motion, and it has to look a certain way, but you need something called a backstroke. And what a backstroke is either this like opposite L, maybe a little bit below, maybe a little bit high, but something here. So when you go back with those shoulders on foot strike, that hip rotation brings the arm up to 90. We never want to be here and lift straight to 90, because your rotator cuff works in 2 parts. You're either going to go back here at an L, or somewhere in this backstroke, doesn't need to be a perfect L, and the hips will bring you up to 90 and you could shoot through. Or you're going to go to 90, hips go through, and the ball dips behind your head. That puts a lot of pressure on the elbow and the shoulder, right? So all it comes down to is where you're holding the football. If you hold that football maybe just a little bit lower, middle of your chest, right pec, I don't like it down here, but I don't like it up here. Somewhere here, when you go back, naturally that's going to get that ball to a backstroke position. And everybody's different. No 2 NFL quarterbacks throw the exact same way. Tom Brady throws a lot different than Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers throws a lot different than maybe Justin Fields, right? There's so many different throwing motions, because everybody's got a different body type, and everybody is built differently, right? So we need to make sure that we have some kind of consistent spot where I'm not tense up top and I can get to that backstroke position, so my hip drive could bring the arm up to 90, which creates a quicker motion, a healthier motion, and makes you a more efficient quarterback. So first thing that every quarterback needs to know, let's get the ball off the shelf and off the ear, not super low, just somewhere relaxed in the middle of your chest, so we can get to that good backstroke position. All right, guys, so the second thing that I feel all quarterbacks need to know is being able to shift with their lower body, not push off of their back foot. So let's talk about that, right? So in the pocket, how many of you guys have been taught, and this is an old school method, people have probably been taught that you want to have a wide base, right? You want your feet to be just outside your shoulder frame, so when you go to throw, it's going to be a shorter stride, because your base is already wide. They say you don't want to be narrow with your base, because what that's going to do is that's going to create a long stride, and then your throwing sequence is going to be off, like we talked about in the very beginning of this video. Remember, the throwing sequence is stride, hips, and then the shoulders and the ball. set up by where you're holding this thing. So now with your base, I don't like that personally, the wide base, because when you're in a wide base, remember, you have to have your front stride down and your hips got to be able to rotate. But if your feet are super wide like so, you physically cannot rotate at your hips. Your hips are going to lock out, legs could extend, and we're going to be limited on the power that I have. So if you close your back foot down, and you want to think of it like your back foot wants to be underneath your armpit. I'm a righty, so my right foot is underneath my right armpit. If you're a lefty, it'd be the opposite, right? So right foot under the armpit. So now your base is obviously more narrow, but look how easy it is to rotate through at your hips. But the old school teaching is that, oh, you want to push off of your back foot. The inside arch of the foot, you want to push. So when you're narrow, it's a long stride. Not if we shift rather than push. So when I'm in my base, I want to think rotation. My power comes from my hips and my core. So if I'm in a good base and I'm in this good spot, when I go to shift through, it's a quicker stride. When you're pushing, it's a long stride. But when we shift and I'm driving off of my back quad, my front foot can get down, shoulders are back, now my hips can clear, and that is what will increase velocity and make me a more efficient passer without having a bunch of pressure on my elbow and my shoulder. But it's all about foot strike and how your hips can rotate through. So again, second thing that every quarterback needs to know, let's shift, not push, and let's make sure that we have that narrow base, not that super wide base. All right, guys, so the next thing that every single quarterback needs to know is where their weight should be distributed in the pocket. So what do I mean by that? I mean, where should you be, like you probably heard the term before, oh, you want to be 60-40, back leg, front leg. Some people say you want to be 50-50. What's the correct way? And honestly, I think it's all about efficiency and what works for the quarterback. But what I like to teach is maybe 65-70% of your weight on your back leg, and I'm going to explain to you why. So the last example, we talked about why quarterbacks do not want to push off of their back foot, because when you're in this narrow base and you push off of this foot, that creates that long stride, right? So now you have to think of it like it's a weight shift. You're shifting weight from your back quad, and that's called a weight transfer. And that weight transfer is what will get your hips to be able to rotate through. Now, when I do this, you want to try to get as much weight through as possible, right? So if you're 50-50, you only got 50% of your weight to be able to drive and transfer through. If you're 65-70% back here, light on the front foot, you're in a good balanced position, base is narrow, you could get that 65-70 to transfer through. And that transfer, that shift, is how you get more power on the ball with your lower body and your hips. Now, remember we talked about this. This is the second benefit of having weight under your back leg like that. Remember in the throwing sequence, what was the first part? It was the front stride, right? So you go to throw, you want that front stride to get down, then the hips rotate through. Now, when your front stride gets down, you want to keep your front shoulder closed, essentially like that baseball swing, right? I'm in the pocket, or not in the pocket, I'm in the batter's box, I step with the front foot, I keep the bat back. You're a golfer, feet are planted, you rotate and you pivot to bring the club through. Same thing when throwing a football. So when you're back into your base, imagine if you have 60 to 50% of this weight on your front foot. It's kind of hard when you take a step to rotate back, but when you have it switched, 65-70, and you're here, it's easier to rotate your shoulders. You guys can all try that right now. Stand on your left foot and try to rotate your shoulders. Pretty hard to rotate, right? Stand on your right foot, rotate your shoulders. Pretty easy to rotate. That's what generates torque. Remember, separating the upper body from the lower body is how we get more snap on that ball. So make sure, fellas, weight distribution, we want about 65 to 70% on that back leg. All right, guys, so the next thing I want to talk about for quarterbacks that I feel every single quarterback needs to know is you need a good pre-snap process. So what do I mean by pre-snap process? I mean that you need to know exactly where you are going to look with your eyes the second that play is called and the second you break the huddle. So I like to start with my pre-snap process inside looking out. And we're going to talk a little bit about just some coverage tips and how you guys can read certain coverages generally, right? So first thing I want to be able to identify, what's the front? Is it a 4-3? Is it a 4-4? Is it odd or even front? What is it, right? And then I want to be able to identify who the mic backer is, because that can kind of tell me about the rest of the coverage. Now, I don't want to neglect it. You hear announcers all the time, like Collinsworth talking about Rodgers, well, oh, he only looks at the defensive front. That's so incorrect. That's so wrong. You want to be able to look at the front, then identify the safeties, and I put the corners last because corners will lie to you, and I'm going to explain what that means. So we look at the front. We see that it's like, let's say it's a 4-3. We've got 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers. I see the mic. That tells me 7 guys probably in the box. So that means there's a couple different things. It's probably a too high safety concept because remember, 11 minus 7 is what? 4. Take the 2 corners out of there, that means there's 2 guys remaining, those are the safeties, right? So it's kind of like a numbers game. Reading coverages is like a numbers game. You've got to get this pre-snap process because this kind of sounds like a lot, right? If you're a beginner quarterback, you're thinking, how the hell am I going to think about all of this and then go run a play and then deliver an accurate ball? But you have to do it over and over again. Repetition is super important at the quarterback position. So first things first, identify the front. Then I look at the safeties. Are they high? Like, are there 2 high safeties? Are they kind of squared up 7 to 8? Are they 10 to 12 a little bit wider? Is it cover 2, cover 4? And then maybe I look to the corners to see if they're giving it away. They're way off. Maybe it looks like zone. They're pressed. It could be press or it could be press bail. That's why I'm saying that the corners will lie to you. They're crafty individuals, so they will try to disguise that coverage. So again, make sure every quarterback needs to have this, a good pre-snap process the second they walk up to that line. All right, guys, the next thing I want to talk about in terms of quarterbacks is the mental side of the game. And I'm not talking about reading coverages. I'm talking about confidence and being able to deal with adversity. So I don't normally talk about this kind of stuff on this channel because I try to keep it very skill related. I know that that's why you guys come to this channel. You come to this channel to improve your skills and to get better. And that's what I try to deliver on. But you cannot execute those skills that you've learned, the mechanics you've learned, the tips that you've learned from myself if you are not taking care of above the neck. You're not taking care of your mind. So what does that mean? So how many of you guys, I'm sure everybody who's played quarterback has thrown a pick. I've been in situations in games where I've thrown 5 picks, 3 picks, 4 picks. And you know what? The thing about interceptions, you cannot dwell on it. Just like a lot of things that can go wrong at the quarterback position. We need to have the mindset of I'm either winning or I'm learning when you're a quarterback. So you can't be that guy that, oh, I threw a pick. Man, like I'm done, like I suck, like I threw a pick, it's bad. You can't have that mindset as a quarterback because that will eat you alive, and we don't have that next play mentality. So what do I mean by next play? I mean, you come out, you throw a pick, it could be the worst pick of your life. It does not matter. It does not even enter your mind. You are focused on the next play. Now, the opposite end of that is you need to have that same attitude and that same mindset when it's a good play. You throw a 50-yard dime and it's a touchdown. You should, like, yeah, get excited, celebrate, but as soon as that play's over, as soon as they blow the whistle, it's over. You're on to the next play and what your job is on that next play. It could be a handoff. What's your job on that handoff? Because that manages the highs and the lows of the position. Because I'm sure everybody's at one point as a quarterback has felt on top of the world. I'm the best. I could throw this. I could throw that. And then you're thinking that you're the greatest, and then you throw a pick. And then what happens? You're result driven, so you go down. Your mood changes. You're down on yourself. You're pissed off. And a bad game goes from bad to worse very quickly. And I've been in those situations, fellas, and the best I've ever played is when I did not care about the result. I cared about the result, but I didn't let it dictate the way I felt. If it was based on feeling like, and I was result-based driven, I would eat myself alive and I could not do this, right? I could not play the position. So you have to understand that, okay, regardless of the result, I'm laser focused on what my job may be. I equate it a lot to like social media, for example. I get a lot of people who comment all the time about how great the videos are, how much they help them, and that's great, and I love to hear that kind of thing, but I also get a lot of negative crap, just like anybody else. And I don't let either of those dictate the way I feel, because that means that I'm relying on something external dictates the way I'm feeling internal, and that distracts me from my goal. I know that's a lot of like above the neck, fancy talk. I get it, but trust me, fellas, if you have your mindset locked in, all this stuff that we focus on the field, you can apply it a lot easier. So make sure we are not result driven. We are focused on the next play. All right, guys, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all on any of the things that we covered in this video, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback, and it's always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you are a quarterback or a wide receiver and would like to train with us this offseason, we're coming out to 11 different states across the country. So check out that very first link in the description below if you want some more information and how you could sign up to work with myself and my staff of guys. I'll see you guys next time.